Hi guys, how's it going? I hope you liked the intro of my 3D printer, and I want to talk a little bit more detail how the system works and the idea behind it. So the basic idea was that with the introduction of the new concrete powder blocks, we can deposit blocks anywhere in a certain volume of blocks. So if you drop the powder block, it would always land on the top surface of water, and if I would add more water blocks later, then I could drop the concrete powder in the next position, and basically without complicated flying machines I can place blocks in a certain spot. So basically with the 3D printer I do the same. I drop the blocks into a certain position, and then if one layer is done, I'm just gonna flood the next layer with the dispensers right here. So it's enough to flood a layer just by placing water on top of other water blocks, and the sources would spread out. So I'll remove that water, but if you would have some blocks there, which is always the case, then the complete next layer would be flooded. Here in this case I'm halfway finished with printing out the chicken, and afterwards you still have to remove that water. So I would just recommend to get some sponges and try to move all the water afterwards. So now let's go through the redstone from the very beginning. So first of all we need a resupply of concrete powder for the printer to work, and you saw in the intro video that I used a gravity block tuber in the end dimension. So I just wanted to show you that it is possible to do it without commands if you really wanted to, but the downside of the gravity block tuber is that it would require a second player in end dimension to load it. But for convenience sakes and for the showcase purpose, I added a command block here that would keep it restocked once this block is broken. So if you want to check out the world aloud, you don't need to worry about a second player being online in the second dimension. You could check this out in single player, and that's why the command block is there. Technically you don't need it. Always get a lot of complaints if I use a command block in my videos, just you don't need it, but it's for convenience sakes. Alternatively, you could add an AFK player and dispense him with concrete powder blocks to keep it restocked. It's also an option. So the next thing we gotta do is tell the machine which color to use in which position. And all the information is stored inside of those double chests here. We put in some shulker boxes and they contain items. So for example here would have the 13th shulker box, red shulker box, contains that information. So at the 13th layer in position 5-1 we need a white concrete powder block, and so on. And basically the machine runs the program step by step, and just have to put in the blocks in the shulker boxes in the right order. And also the shulker boxes have to be distributed in the right order. So basically they are sent to this dispenser right here, and there's a hopper below that would take out the items out of the shulker box, which is dispensed by the dispenser. So basically the hopper gets unpowered for 4 game ticks, and it's enough for one item to pass through. Gets sent to this dropper right here, and this always contains one single item just shot out at each step. So then the item is sent over those item filters. For example, we get a yellow item, then the item filter grabs the item, and we have signal strength 2 for a short moment, which the observer detects. And then a signal is sent upwards to this color converter. So basically here's yellow send upwards, and quickly powers this one here. So the idea of having a color converter is that instead of having 16 different block storages with the corresponding colors, I just need one storage, and the color doesn't matter at all. So this color converter was first shown by test 137E29. The basic idea is if you send over a block in this position, it would start falling in after 2 game ticks. So it converts into a falling block entity and starts falling. But if you send in a 0 tick other gravity block in the game tick when the first block starts converting, the new block would be converted into the new color. So I push over this block, wait 2 game ticks, the block sits in the air, starts converting into a falling block entity, and then I push in the other block with a 0 tick. And then the blocks would just fall down, are getting powered right here and launch the flying machine. And then the flying machine basically fills up this line step by step. So as you can see, the block gets powered, launches the flying machine, and bumps against to this observer block, which causes the machine to return and advance one step further. So once the flying machine reaches the very end, then two things happen. This observer is brought back into the starting position, and those flying machines are launched. So also bump against observers and drop the blocks down in the correct positions. And now this observer was brought back, but this flying machine, and then the cycle starts again. So now I'm starting at the beginning again, and I'm filling up this line again. Now let's also take a look at a few technicalities. I wanted to make this concept as fast as possible, and it shouldn't malfunction. So it can't drop blocks while this flying machine is on the way, and that's why those blocks are dropped once the flying machine docks again. Then basically this redstone block is in again, and this starts the mechanism. Also, if the flying machine docks, then a new order is sent out. So basically this dropper here is powered again, shoots out the new block, and then a new order is sent out. But those orders are held. So for example, if I drop in a new block and I just simulate the new order by quickly powering this piston right here with the cauldron, and basically this comparator is locked as long as the flying machine isn't docked yet. And as soon as the flying machine docks again, then the color converter starts. So now let's also simulate what happens if those second flying machines reaches their limit. So then two things happen. Those observer blocks, which cause those second flying machines to return, are also sent back by this other flying machine, and then the order is sent out to dispense new water. So we drop in the last few blocks, and then also those droppers are getting powered, the second lane. And this flying machine brings those observer backs, and then it starts again from the start. This is a safety mechanism, because if those flying machines aren't in yet, wouldn't make sense to drop blocks on top of them. That's basically the safety mechanism that it would malfunction. Those dispensers, by the way, don't have to be refilled after the machine is done, because they suck in some water again. So how does this work? How do we make sure that only a single row of dispensers is powered at a time? So we have this dropper tower. And basically the item advances by one step every time a layer is finished. And then the next comparator would be turned on. This observer detects the comparator. Basically, once it's turned on, it sends a signal to those rails, which other observers detect, and also other observers repeat the signal, and they would power the dispensers right here. You don't have to don't have to worry about quasi connectivity, because those blocks are only powered for 2 game ticks, and some water couldn't update the block below because dispensers have a 4 game tick delay, so the quasi connectivity doesn't matter. You might have also noticed that the area where you can place blocks in is a little bit smaller than the chamber. So you have a 12 by 12 area where you can print blocks, but it's a 13 by 13 chamber. And the reason is that those buckets which would suck in the water are held empty. If you would fill up the area completely, then of course no water could be sucked in afterwards. And this is just to make it simpler. Of course I could make a workaround, add a monostable right here and a pulse extender for about 3 seconds of delay and power those dispensers twice, but I thought we'd just keep it simpler and just make the chamber 1 block larger on each side. By the way, I didn't even mention yet that this is infinitely expandable. So here we have a 12 by 12 by 19 area, 19 high, but the concept is infinitely expandable. So here's the larger version. The only thing I had to add was more flying machines and more dispensers. That's it. So you can make this infinitely large. Also the height, yeah, here it's unchanged, but you could also make this as high as you want. Build limit is of course the limit. So I probably also want to know how to program this machine. It's a little bit tricky. Here we have the chicken with some flowers that I printed out, and basically split it up layer by layer and put it into corresponding shulker boxes. So my idea would be nice if we would divide this 12 by 12 area into 8 smaller areas, which could be corresponding shulker boxes. But turns out this isn't as simple as I thought, because if I would have, let's say, this 3 by 6 area is the first shulker box, and that's the next shulker box, and I want to process those in the right order. So basically this block is done first, second, and then it's the 6th block, and I would need to switch to the second shulker box, which is next, and then this line is next, and then this line is next, and so on. That's how the machine works. It goes from left to right, and from bottom to top, basically. Of course, I couldn't really shuffle the items around in the shulker box once it's configured, because they would just stack together. That's why I had to sort them in by hand. And you might also have seen the second issue you would have with it. So we would fill this up like it is, from top to bottom, left to right. Then in the shulker box, those items would come first, but they are done third by the machine. So basically I had to mirror the content of this shulker box. Here's a good example. Here in the back, this little flower. So you can see it's mirrored. Normally it would look like this. Now I lost it. Yeah, like this. But I had to mirror everything, so the machine translates it into correct orders. But of course there's a little trick how you could fill those shulker boxes in the right order. So for example, let's fill up this shulker box in the right order. So we have red, then here we have a lot of white blocks, and one there. So the spots where no blocks should be printed out, I just use those gray glass panes to fill them up. And now just to reverse the order, to mirror it, just have to change those positions. You don't have to think about it, how it looks, just do it like a robot. Just switch them around. But at least I could deal with the issue that we had to switch around between shulker boxes. So first I need to take out the content of the first shulker box 6 times, then switch to the second shulker box, switch to the shulker box again, and so on, and I'll just do that with Redstone. See here in the back is a small counter which counts to 6, and then the signal is just sent to one of those hoppers under the shulker boxes to take out one item. Here I switch around. So now the signal passes through this block, but not through this block. And once I reach 6, then the order is just reversed. And that's how I switch between the 2 shulker boxes. And also once the shulker box is empty, of course, it would be broken by this piston and even be sorted into those chests right here. So once I configured all the shulker boxes, I also had to sort in the shulker boxes in the correct order. The correct order is, we have 2 sides. Those shulker boxes on the left would go on the left side, of course the right ones on the right side, and from bottom to top. So the first layer, and then it would just fill it up like this, in those colors, and then next layer, and so on. And as you can see, that's how they are sorted in those boxes. So I also need to block those hoppers right here to keep the order intact, because I need more than a double chest. Otherwise, if we would take out the first one, then the others would trickle down, and this redstone block would only retract once this chest is completely empty, and then the next ones would go through the hopper and the order is kept intact. In case I would have even a larger machine, then I could also add this a few times more, just add another comparator, sticky piston, redstone block, and so on, so I could chain this up. You also might be wondering, wouldn't it be easier to put in the items in the order the machine processes them? And that's what I did with the big machine right here. My opinion was a little more tedious and want to have the input as simple as possible. But here with this big machine, made the redstone a little bit simpler because I don't need the counter and so on. And here I just put in the items in the correct order directly. By the way, I used a 2D pixel art, didn't fill it up completely, just print out one layer in Big Machine. So if you want to see which 2D pixel art I used, you could keep this machine running for about 3 to 4 hours. So the machine isn't really fast. The version you saw before, the 12x12x19, would take about 6 or 7 hours. And the larger you make it, then the slower it gets. So this would take about 11 times as long with this 27x27 area, so about 80 hours. So now let's quickly go back to this example right here, because I'm not really satisfied with my solution. Of course, another option would be to just use a single line per shulker box, but it's also not great, and it would need a 3 times amount of shulker boxes. And it would be really nice if we just could split it up like this and put them in the right order, and then maybe some kind of a mechanism would shuffle them around. But there's really nothing in the game, and if we would try to do anything with those items, they would just stick together. I can't put them in a certain position. Then add the idea how it would work if we had more features in the game. So we have records, and they are non-stackable. I could shuffle those around and put them into certain positions inside of a shulker box, and this way could make it happen. But then we have 2 problems. First of all, I can't input records manually into a jukebox, and there are only 12 records, but we have 16 colors. So if you would have 16 different records with colors, and you could automatically put them into a jukebox and also take them out of a hopper again, this would be so great for automation, and a lot of systems would be possible. Maybe you should start a petition or tell Jeb he should implement it finally so jukeboxes work with hoppers. Also, I might be missing something obvious here, so if you have a better idea how you could configure the input of a 3D printer, let me know in the comments. So before I end this video, I want to talk about 2 improvements I thought after finishing these machines. So the first idea is, instead of letting the blocks uncovered or let the water sit in there, where I don't want to drop any concrete powder blocks, maybe drop sand there. So it might be easier to drain the area afterwards, because you just need to break the sand with a shovel or just to place a torch below so it would break. That would be an option. Of course, then you would need a second pillar next to a concrete powder pillar, you need a sand pillar as well. And of course, the sand tuber could also be attached to this. If you have a second player, then it's no problem at all. But if you would, I don't know if somebody would want to build in survival, but then if you need to restock 2 pillars for an AFK player, this might be an issue. The second improvement, of course, this machine is not really fast, but keep in mind it's the first of its kind, and it just wants to have a working machine first. The idea would be to refill this array of flying machines directly instead of using this flying machine. Of course, it would require a lot more effort, and would you program it and so on. But this would be the next step, I guess, to make it a lot faster, if that's really desirable. And then let's also talk about the world downloads. So they're fully stocked. As I said, in the large version I made a 2D pixel art in the first layer, and in the smaller version you can print out the chicken, and all you gotta do is press this button, and then the machine would do everything fully automatically and also finish once it's done. So thanks a lot for watching, have a nice day, bye bye.